Have you ever felt invisible, like nobody truly sees you or understands you? Psalm chapter 139 reminds us that the God of heaven knows us better than we know ourselves. He saw us before we took our first breath, He searches our thoughts before we speak a word, and He walks with us wherever we go. There is no hiding place from His presence, and that's not a threat, it's a comfort. You are fully known, fully seen, and wonderfully made by God. This passage reveals God's intimate knowledge, constant presence, and creative power in our lives, reminding us that we are fully known and wonderfully made by Him. Its purpose is to bring comfort, conviction, and confidence that no matter where we go or what we face, God sees us, guides us, and has a divine plan for our existence. David begins this psalm by acknowledging God's complete knowledge of him. The word, searched, means examined carefully, as a miner searches deep into the earth or as a judge investigates a case. God doesn't just glance at us, He thoroughly knows every detail. Known me means God understands us better than we understand ourselves, our thoughts, motives, struggles, and desires. This verse sets the foundation. Nothing about us is hidden from God. For personal life, you are not a mystery to God. Even when people misunderstand or misjudge you, God sees your heart with perfect clarity. For spiritual growth, because God already knows us fully, we can come to Him honestly in prayer. No masks, no pretending. For comfort, when you feel forgotten, this verse reminds you, God is intimately aware of you and cares about every detail of your life. Think of a doctor who studies a patient's body through scans and tests, seeing what even the patient doesn't know about themselves. Or like a parent who knows their child's habits so well, they can predict what they'll do before they do it. In a far greater way, God has searched and knows us completely. God knows you inside and out. You may be misunderstood by people, but you are never misunderstood by Him. David expands on God's knowledge of him. God knows the smallest details of his daily life. My downsitting and mine uprising. The ordinary routines, when he sits down to rest or rises to work. Nothing is too small for God to notice. Thou understandest my thought afar off. God not only knows what David thinks, but He understands why. He discerns the heart behind the thought, even before the words are spoken. This verse reveals that God's knowledge is both comprehensive, covering every action, and penetrating, reaching into the hidden thoughts of the mind. For daily living, God cares about the ordinary details of your life, not just the big spiritual moments, but also your sitting, standing, working, and resting. For holiness, since God knows our thoughts, we should seek purity not only in our actions but in our inner life. For comfort, even when you can't explain your feelings or thoughts to others, God already understands them completely. Think of predictive text on your phone. It tries to guess what you're about to type, but often gets it wrong. God, however, knows the entire sentence of your life before you type the first letter. He sees your thoughts forming before you even think them fully. God knows not only what you do but what you think, and He understands you better than you understand yourself. David continues to describe God's intimate knowledge. Thou compassest my path. The word compassest means to search out, winnow, or scrutinize carefully. God examines every step of David's journey, his choices, directions, and activities in life. And my lying down, even in rest or sleep, God is fully aware of him. His knowledge is not limited to moments of activity but includes times of stillness. Art acquainted with all my ways, God is not a casual observer. He knows every pattern, habit, strength, weakness, and tendency of David's life. This shows God's complete awareness. Whether walking, working, or resting, nothing escapes His eye. For believers, your daily routines, even what seems unimportant, are known to God. He sees your faithfulness in small things and your struggles in private. For comfort, God watches over you when you are awake and when you sleep. His care is constant. For accountability, since God knows all your ways, you cannot hide sinful habits from Him. This truth calls us to walk in integrity. Think of GPS tracking on a phone. It records where you've been, your patterns, and even predicts your routines. But unlike GPS, God doesn't just know where you are. He knows why you take the paths you do. Or picture a shepherd who knows not only where his sheep walk during the day but also where they lie down at night. God's knowledge of us is even deeper. God knows your journey, your rest, and your habits. Every step and every pause in your life is fully seen and understood by Him. David highlights the depth of God's knowledge. There is not a word in my tongue, before He even speaks, before the words are formed in His mouth. But, lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. God already knows not only the words themselves but the intent, the tone, and the motive behind them. This verse teaches that God's knowledge is perfect, total, and immediate. He knows our speech before we utter it, nothing surprises him. Guard your words. Since God knows every word before it's spoken, we should speak with reverence, kindness, and truth. Pray with honesty. You don't have to dress up your prayers. God already knows what you're going to say. Speak openly and sincerely with him. Be comforted. When words fail you, in grief, pain, or confusion, God already understands the cry of your heart before it's spoken. Think of a parent who knows their child so well that they can finish their sentences. Or imagine a songwriter who already knows the full song while the first notes are just being played. In a much greater way, God knows our words completely before they leave our mouths. Every word you speak, even in spoken thoughts on your tongue, are fully known to God. He knows your heart behind your words. David here describes God's presence as surrounding and guiding him. Thou hast beset me behind and before. The word beset means to enclose, surround, or hem in. God's presence is like a protective barrier before and behind David. There is no escaping him. And laid thine hand upon me. God's hand represents both guidance and control. It can feel heavy in discipline, yet comforting in protection. This verse shows that God's knowledge of us is not distant observation, it is an active presence that shapes, guards, and directs our lives. For comfort, God surrounds you completely, you are never outside of his care. For accountability, you cannot outrun God or escape his presence, so live in integrity before him. For guidance, his hand is not to crush but to lead. When you feel pressed in, it may be God guiding you into his will. Think of a child learning to walk while the parent hovers close, one hand behind to catch them if they fall, the other in front to guide them forward. That's how God surrounds us, or like a shepherd hemming sheep into a safe fold, with fences behind and before, ensuring they don't stray into danger. God surrounds you on every side and lays his guiding hand upon your life. His presence is both protective and purposeful. David pauses to reflect on what he has just declared about God's omniscience, perfect knowledge, and omnipresence, ever-present nature. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. The word wonderful here means extraordinary, incomprehensible, beyond reach. God's knowledge of us is greater than human understanding. It is high, I cannot attain unto it. David admits that trying to fully grasp God's wisdom and presence is like trying to climb a mountain too tall to scale. The human mind cannot fully comprehend God's ways. This verse is a confession of awe. God's knowledge is beyond human comprehension. For humility, recognize that you cannot outthink, outplan, or outknow God. His wisdom is infinitely higher. For worship, instead of being frustrated that you can't understand everything about God, let it lead you to worship him for his greatness. For trust, since his knowledge is higher than ours, we can rest in his wisdom even when life doesn't make sense. Think of trying to explain the internet to a toddler. Their mind can't take it all in. In the same way, God's knowledge is infinitely beyond our capacity. Or picture someone staring up at the night sky. The more they look, the more they realize how vast and unreachable it is. That's what David feels about God's knowledge. God's wisdom and knowledge are beyond human understanding, too high to reach, yet close enough to guide us. The right response is not confusion but worship and trust. David begins a new section of the psalm, shifting from God's omniscience, all-knowing, VV.1-6, to his omnipresence, present everywhere, VV.7-12. Whither shall I go from thy spirit? This is a rhetorical question. There is no place where God's spirit is absent. Or whither shall I flee from thy presence? Even if David tried to run away, God's presence would still be there. The question isn't about wanting to escape God, but about recognizing the impossibility of it. This verse introduces the idea that no matter where you are, high, low, near, far, God is already there. For the sinner, you cannot escape God's presence. Running from him is futile, better to turn back in repentance. For the believer, you are never alone. In your highest moments and lowest valleys, God is present. For prayer life, since God's Spirit is everywhere, you can call on him anytime, anywhere. It's like a fish trying to escape water, it cannot, because water surrounds it. In the same way, we live, move, and have our being in God's presence, Acts chapter 17 verse 28. Or picture a child playing hide and seek with a parent. The child thinks they are hidden, but the parent sees them all along. That's how it is with us and God. There is no fleeing from God's Spirit and no escaping His presence. Wherever you are, God is already there. David gives two extreme locations to show the limitless reach of God's presence. If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. In the highest and most glorious place imaginable, God is present. If I make my bed in hell, Sheol, the realm of the dead in Hebrew thought, even in the lowest, darkest place, God is still there. David is not describing his desire to be in hell, but making the point that from the highest height to the lowest depth, there is no place beyond God's presence. For encouragement, whether you are on the mountaintop of life's blessings or in the valley of despair, God is with you. For conviction, there is no sin so hidden, no place so dark, where God does not see. For comfort in death, even the grave cannot separate us from God's presence, a foreshadowing of eternal hope in Christ. Think of a submarine plunging into the depths of the ocean and a rocket soaring into outer space. Both extremes are beyond human reach, but neither is beyond God's. Or picture cell phone coverage, it has dead zones. But God's presence has no dead zones. Wherever you go, His signal is strong. From the heights of heaven to the depths of the grave, God's presence surrounds you. There is no place too high, too low, or too dark for Him to reach. David now paints another picture of God's omnipresence, not vertical, heaven, hell as in verses 8, but horizontal, east to west, if I take the wings of the morning. A poetic image of the speed of sunlight racing across the sky at dawn. It suggests swiftness and distance. And dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea. For David, this likely referred to the farthest western horizon, where the Mediterranean stretched beyond sight. In other words, the farthest place imaginable. Even there shall thy hand lead me. No matter how far, God's guidance is there. And thy right hand shall hold me. The right hand symbolizes strength, authority, and security. God not only guides, He upholds. David affirms that there is no distance too far for God's leading and protective hand. For life's journey, no matter how far you feel you've drifted, God can still reach you, guide you, and hold you. For missions and calling, wherever God sends you, His hand will lead and sustain you. Distance doesn't remove His presence. For assurance, God's grip is stronger than your struggles. Even in the farthest, loneliest places, His hand is still holding you. Imagine a child wandering in a crowded place, but the parent's hand never lets go. Even if the child runs far, the grip of love holds them secure. Or picture flying across the world. No matter how far the plane goes, the laws of gravity still hold. In the same way, God's hand holds His children everywhere. No matter how far or fast you run, God's hand is already there, leading, guiding, and holding you securely. David now shifts from distance, VV 8 to 10, to darkness, another thing humans think can hide them. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, David imagines trying to hide under the cover of night, believing darkness could conceal him from God. Even the night shall be light about me, but for God, night is as bright as day. Darkness cannot hide anyone from His presence. The darkness hideth not from thee. God sees clearly in what seems like absolute darkness to us. The night shineth as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to thee. Unlike humans, God is not limited by light or dark. His vision and presence are absolute. This section reinforces the truth. There is no hiding place from God, not in distance, not in death, not in darkness. For conviction, we cannot hide sin in the dark corners of life. What is hidden from others is fully visible to God. For comfort, God is with us in the darkest nights of sorrow, depression, or fear. What feels like overwhelming darkness is as light to Him. For trust, since God sees perfectly in the dark, we can trust Him to guide us when we cannot see the way. Think of night vision goggles. Where humans see only blackness, the device reveals everything clearly. God's sight is infinitely greater. He sees as clearly in the dark as in the day. Or imagine a child afraid of the dark in their bedroom, but the parent sees them clearly and is right there. Darkness doesn't diminish the parent's presence, and it certainly never hides us from God. Darkness cannot hide you from God. He sees just as clearly in the night as in the day, and His presence shines even in your darkest moments. David now shifts from God's omniscience, VV.1 to 6, and omnipresence, VV.7 to 12, to His creative power in our lives, VV.13 to 16. Thou hast possessed my reins. The reins refers to the innermost being, often connected to emotions and motives. God formed even the hidden parts of David's life. Thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. God's intimate involvement begins before birth. The Hebrew word covered means woven or knitted together, like a skillful craftsman at work. I will praise thee. David's natural response is worship. The more he reflects on God's design, the more he is moved to praise. For I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Fearfully means made with reverence and awe. Wonderfully means distinct, set apart, unique. Every human is a masterpiece of God's craftsmanship. Marvelous are thy works. David acknowledges God's creative acts as awe-inspiring. And that my soul knoweth right well, deep within, he recognizes that his very existence is a testimony of God's greatness. For identity, your worth is not defined by culture, people, or achievements. It is defined by your Creator, who made you with awe and wonder. For pro-life conviction, life is sacred from the womb. God is intimately involved in shaping each person before birth. For worship, reflecting on God's design should lead us not to pride, but to praise. For encouragement, when you struggle with self-worth, remember, you are not an accident, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Think of a master artist painting a portrait with careful strokes. Each detail is intentional. In the same way, God designs every feature of our lives with purpose. Or picture an engineer crafting a blueprint. Nothing is random, every part has meaning. God designed you with greater skill and love than any builder or designer could imagine. You are no accident, you are God's masterpiece, fearfully and wonderfully made. Your very existence is proof of his marvelous works. David continues describing God's involvement in his creation before birth. My substance was not hid from thee. Substance means frame, bones, or body. Even when hidden in the womb, God fully saw him. When I was made in secret, refers to the hidden, unseen process of life being formed inside the mother. And curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Curiously wrought means intricately woven, like embroidery. The womb is poetically pictured as a secret, hidden chamber. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, God saw him even as an embryo, before his body was fully developed. And in thy book all my members were written. God had a divine blueprint, every part of David's life recorded before it came to be. Which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. God ordained his life step by step, even before the first day began. This reveals not only God's creative power but his sovereign plan for each person's life. For identity, you are not random. God designed every detail of your body, personality, and purpose. For encouragement, even before anyone knew you, God saw you, loved you, and had a plan for you. For reverence of life, every stage of life, even before birth, is sacred, seen, and known by God. For trust, since God knew your life before you were born, you can trust him with your future. Think of a weaver at a loom, carefully threading colors to form a tapestry. The pattern isn't clear at first, but the designer already knows the finished masterpiece. That's how God knits our lives together. Or consider an architect's blueprint. The building doesn't exist yet, but every detail is already written down. God had the blueprint of your life before you ever took your first breath. God saw you, shaped you, and planned your life before you were even born. You are the result of his intentional design and purpose. From the moment of our conception to the days we now live, God has searched us, known us, and surrounded us with his presence. There is no place too high, too low, or too dark where his spirit cannot reach us. And before we spoke a word or took a breath, he had already written our days in his book. So let us live with confidence, fully known, fearfully and wonderfully made, and forever held in the hands of the God who fills heaven and earth. Family, if this message reminded you that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, then take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this video. Drop a comment below and let us know, which verse in Psalm chapter 139 spoke to you the most? Let's encourage one another with God's word.